Hi, I'm going to do another question and answer. These are a bunch of questions that people have had. I'm happy to do these as often as you want. I usually just collect a bunch of questions and then I will film a video to answer them. First one, Dahlia tubers versus Dahlia seeds and pros and cons. So Dahlia tubers will give you an exact clone of the plant it came from. So if you like a flower and you want to grow that flower, then you want a tuber from that plant, and then it will produce the same flowers as your seed. You could also save seeds from that plant. So from a flower from that plant, you let it die in the plant, it gets pollinated, it makes seeds, and then you could plant those seeds. Each one of those seeds would be hybrids. They would not be the same as the plant. They would might share characteristics, but you honestly don't know what you're going to get, and a lot of it depends on the surrounding plants that you have. Dominant traits in dahlias are open centers and the color yellow. So if you have a lot of open-centered dahlias in your dahlia field, you're most likely going to get open-centered dahlias when you grow the seeds. That's one of the reasons why I actually don't grow open-centered dahlias, is I mean, I like open-centereds fine, but they don't make good cut flowers, and that's what I'm growing for. So I don't want those if I'm breeding for dahlias. So the other differences are tubers are more expensive. Tubers easily run between $10 to $30 now, depending upon which variety you want and how sought after it is. A lot of that price actually has to do with the fact that not all tubers store the same. So you'll find that the more expensive varieties are either new introductions or they're really, really hard to store, and so the price goes up because the demand is high, but it's hard to keep a lot of them in stock. Cons of tubers, again, they are more prone to disease. You're less likely to get sick plants if you grow from seeds. Disease is tricky in dahlias. A lot of people, it's tricky because it's common. It's very, very common. That doesn't mean that your plants will be sick. I'm growing like 1,200, and as far as I can tell, and I keep a pretty good eye on them, they look all fine. But there are certain diseases that your dahlias can get, like crown gall, leafy gall, tomato spotted wilt virus, mosaic virus. And if your plant gets them, you have to cull the entire plant. You can't keep anything from it because the tubers will all be infected and it will spread. So that's a con. On a business standpoint, it can be a good investment if you're committed to keeping as clean a field as possible and quality, because tubers are in high demand right now. And so if you wanted to sell them, that's a viable stream of income. The other pro of tubers and seeds is that each tuber or seed will make a bunch of its own tubers. So if you planted a seed and you liked the flower, it's going to actually create between 4 to 8 tubers during the growing season, which you could then save. And when you planted those next year, they would most likely be the same flower as you planted. I say most likely because seedlings from dahlias actually need 2 to 3 years of growing the same one before you could safely introduce it, because sometimes with the seedlings they'll revert back to a different form on the second year of growing. So people grow them over several years before they release them to make sure that they're actually true to type and that people are getting what they think they're getting. So that's kind of a pretty short summary of the difference in the pros and cons. If there's something that I didn't cover there that you're interested in, definitely let me know. Another question I had are sweet peas invasive? I wish they were. No, as far as I know, I mean, check your area. They're not invasive. There is a wild type of sweet pea that is considered invasive in some parts of the country, but that isn't anything like any of the hybridized types that people buy or sell for cut flowers. Sweet peas, honestly actually have a reputation for being a little bit difficult. Although I don't think they are, just as long as you make sure they have the stuff that they like, which is really good soil, lots of water, and a cold period for them to establish in. Another question, is it worth it to grow Lisianthus? I don't think so, but I live in a climate that does not get hot summers. We had a kind of crappy spring as far as weather went, and it takes forever to grow. If you're starting it from seed, it's seed and like 7 months later when you're gonna get blooms. If you're growing in a small space, that's a lot of time to give to something that's not producing. I did a trial crop of it this year because everybody raves about it. It is beautiful. It does get an amazing vase life, like 14 plus days. I just wish it didn't take so long to grow. I grew from plugs that I got from Farmer Bailey's. I didn't even try the seed because I just heard so many horror stories from farmers where you have to keep your seeds at a certain temperature and they're just really prone to damping off. They're really prone to just dying on you if you forget, if you lower the temperature. And I was like, I don't have time for that. So I did plugs and they grew and they're fine. But they're shorter than I'd want. I'd say I'm looking at them right now. They're like 14 inches. And really, that's not considered a great stem length. I mean, it's fine for market bouquets, but I mean, if you were selling to a florist, you want something more closer to 2 feet. So I don't plan on growing it again. But if you are in love with it, grow it. The difficulty of a plant shouldn't stop you from growing it if you really, really want to grow it. Because the stuff that we care about the most is the stuff that we invest the most time and energy into. So yeah, if you want to, grow it. Oh, one other note, it is prone to fusarium wilt, which is a type of disease that stays in your soil for quite a long time. So if you get it, you need to replace all the soil in your bed or not grow there for 3 years. That's not a given that they'll get it, but if they're stressed out, they will get it, and then you have a problem. So if you do grow them, I'd dedicate a raised bed to them, just so that if you do run into problems, it's a lot simpler to change out the soil for that for the future. So that's just my recommendation. I had a few starting to get it this year, and I just pulled them out really quickly so it didn't affect the whole crop. But yeah, that's my experience with Lisianthus. Most people would agree with me that it's a difficult plant to grow, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't. I know a lot of people who grow it really successfully live in places that have way hotter summers than I do. They do love heat. They're kind of like celosia in that way. So, yeah. Another question, mint, using it as a foliage and considering whether it's invasive. It is invasive. Mint is definitely invasive. If you plant mint in a bed, you will always have mint. But that doesn't mean it's a bad invasive. And what I mean by that is there's two types of invasive plants. There's invasive plants that just take over everything and are really hard to eradicate. Their roots go deep. You can't you're breaking your back to get them out of the ground. And then there's invasives like mint that, you know, sure, you're never going to be able to get rid of it, but you could literally just reach your hand down and pull a giant clump out, and then you'd have a bare spot. It's not choking out plants. Like, it cohabitates with plants pretty easily because it's not something that actually really goes deep into the soil. Their rhizomes kind of go along the surface most of the time. It's just that every tiny piece of little root is going to create a mint plant. I like it as a farmer. I'm actually growing a whole bed of apple mint, which is a really taller variety, just for foliage because it smells really good. And it just is so whimsical, and I really like that. So, I mean, if you're going to grow it, I would recommend a raised bed just so you know you don't run into problems down the road, or if you sell your property, you know, the new owners don't like hate your guts because now they have a giant patch of mint. But I think it's worth growing. It's a good filler, and it's super easy to grow in most climates. Another one that's good is mountain mint, and I don't think that one's quite as invasive as like normal types of mint. Plus, you know, you can make mint tea, and that's a great stress reliever. So that's the only, those are the questions I had for today. If you have more, definitely let me know, and I will answer them.